that godly injunction which is characteristic of modern jihad. It is embodied in the oft-repeated motto, "We love death more than you love life," a motto that we've heard not only from people like Osama bin Laden, but from many Saudi clerics, from Iraqi secular nationalists, from PLO leaders and media, and the Muslim Brotherhood, and so on. It is an essential tenet of the ideology of modern jihad. Modern jihadis, very strangely, and I think it would be to their great surprise, have a belief structure with one precedent in known history. It is the millenarians and Gnostic insurgents of late medieval Europe. Between 1100 and 1500, Europe was racked by endless insurrections led by people who thought of themselves as an elite of amoral supermen. In fact, there were totalitarians who believed that God had entrusted them with a cosmic mission and that God wanted torrents of blood to be shed for his kingdom to be established here on earth. Following their prophets, thousands upon thousands challenged and very nearly toppled dukedoms and kingdoms throughout Europe. The belief structure is a strict homology with the belief structure of modern jihad. It simply takes the form in the world of Islam of the Mahdi, the announced one, but who precedes the apocalypse, but it exists in the form of political Mahdism. It is a politicized form of religion that can be traced to Jalal al-Din al-Afghani in the 19th century, who created, that's rather remarkable, both pan-Arabism and pan-Islamism, which allows us to understand why the same themes and the same belief structures are to be found amongst secular nationalists, so-called, and religious Islamic radicals. This is all based on what I've called a Manichaean tribalism. The belief structure exhibited by the jihadis is them and us. It's Dar al-Harb, Dar al-Islam. In an honor-based society where kinship trumps any form of what the Romans called res publica, this kind of division, of strict dichotomy of the world, where anyone who's not, well, you all know probably this proverb that says, me against my brother, me and my brother against our cousins, us and our cousins against the rest of the world. It's very expressive of this tribalism. When the tribalism meets the ideology, it becomes this Manichaean, or what I've called Gnostic ideology. But the story of modern jihad is rooted in the traditional jihad of Islam, the jihad you have in Quran and Hadith and Sunnah. But it also has a very odd pedigree. In 1914, the Sultan Caliph of the Ottoman Empire declared jihad against England, Russia, and France, and he got the Sheikhul Islam to issue a fatwa to that effect. The interesting thing is that the proclamation had been written by a man called Max von Oppenheim, who was the head of the Middle Eastern desk of German military intelligence. So that tells us already that this great modern jihad has unexpected sources. A second unexpected source, very closely connected to the first one, occurred in the city of Baku in 1920, where the Communist International gathered what they called the Conference of the Toilers of the East. And the whole leadership of the Communist International was there, literally calling for jihad. And you have people like Grigor Zinoviev and Karl Radek and other leading lights of the Communist International, saying, "Long live the Jihad." Wow. And of course the stenographic account of that conference says the whole room rises with their weapons and their arms and scream, long live Jihad. There were many lines of communication between Bolsheviks and the modern jihadis. In the Russian Civil War of 1918-1921, the Muslims of the Russian Empire played a decisive role. There were 250,000 Muslims in the Red Army by the end of the war, and they had their own political officers, and they were Muslims who'd become Bolsheviks. And then they didn't necessarily stay Bolsheviks. They very often reverted to their original faith, but they'd gained something in the process. And what they'd gained was the Bolshevik concept that terror is a system of rule and power. And that is what the modern jihadis learned from the Bolsheviks. I note also that one crucial amongst the many connecting links or lines of communications between the Bolsheviks and the modern jihadis was Amin al-Hajj al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who worked with the Communist International in the 1920s and with the Nazis in the 30s and 40s, before being one of the major personalities at the Great Third World Meeting of Bandung in Indonesia in the mid-50s. So these encounters are more than simultaneous coexistence. They are lines of communications whereby the jihad that had been created by pan-Islam become a hybrid with the modern 20th century totalitarian ideologies and practices. And I'd always been extremely struck by the Leninist tonality in the writings of a number of the chief ideologists of Islam, of radical Islam, like Abu Ala Maududi in Pakistan, like Ali Shariati in Persia, like Said Qutb for the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and of course Ruhollah Khomeini, the Imam Mahdi. That's blasphemous, but he called himself that, not me. And both Maududi and Khomeini considered themselves essentially to be quasi-Mahdis. And after that, the second-rank ideologists of this